All right, I'm starting recording now. If you're watching this, you missed, I forgot to do the beginning part. So if you have questions about the beginning part of 4.1 homework, contact Ms. White. We're just on number 10. Yeah, Cooper?
So Steven's
third angle theorem. So because I know that the two other angles were congruent to the two other angles, then I can say that those last angles, M and P, are congruent. Letter D, it looks like a lot of information, but it just is saying all the sides are congruent. Because the picture was already marked with all my sides are congruent, then I get to say that was given to me. I don't know why they're marked congruent. It just was written. So I get to say that was given to me. I'm going to use it. And then last, we did this before. Again, we did our side angle, side, etc. So we had to prove all three sides were congruent and all three angles were congruent for 6 total pieces of information. And because of that, we call that the definition of congruent triangles. So we had to prove all the sides and all the angles were congruent. And then by definition, I had congruent angles. So that's how that problem looked. Any questions? Yep, Cooper? TH dot is theorem. I just got too lazy to write it all the way out. Any other questions? Okay. If you have this on paper, just put it aside. I'll come get it in a second. Get your 4, 2, 4, 3 out. That's what I want to look at next. Any questions from the Zoom crowd before I move on? All right, just speak up if you have any questions. All right, I'm moving over. I had a hard time finding this earlier today, so I'm glad I already have it found. Okay. Okay, we're going to go slowly over this, so make sure you ask any questions that you have. On the back side, I think that was a little confusing, so we'll do some of those together. But I want you to just check 4 at a time on the front side. You really should have all I have written down. If you just have SSS or ASA, that's not enough stuff. You need to put congruent marks on your picture, and you need to write like reflexive or vertical angles are congruent, or anything else that might come up, okay? Some of them might not need anything, but if they do need something, you gotta have that written too. So if you're looking at the first 4, are there any questions anyone has? Yeah.
Why is number 1 none?
Good question. So number 1 is none, because if I zoom in on number 1, I have angle, and then I have a side, but then I have another side that's not next to the angle. It doesn't touch the angle. So technically, this is an angle side. In order for it to be a side angle side, it would have to be this side right here that connects at the angle. So this is technically angle side, and can we do that? So as soon as I write that down, I'd be like, oh, I can't write that, so I cross it off. That's not a reason, so it's none. Any other questions on 1 through 4? Anybody?
Well, like, can you explain like how it wouldn't be SAS for number 1? So, because I'm confused on the whole angle.
Yes. So if I have my picture here, I have this side, and then this angle. I'm looking at the top triangle, essentially. The 2 sides don't touch the angle. The side in between them does, but do you see how this side up here doesn't touch the angle that I'm looking at? Same thing for the other one. If I did it this way, if I did side, angle, this is my side over here. The angle they touch is technically this one right there. Do you see how the highlight overlaps both of those? That's where they touch. Since this side along this way does not touch the angle, it doesn't get to be counted as side, angle, side. As we see more of these, I think some of our questions will clear up too. So keep asking them, but I might say like just kind of hang tight and we'll see what happens next. Anything else on 1 through 4? All right, let's keep going. Here's 5, 6, 7, 8. Any questions on 5, 6, 7, or 8? Sounds like Lord of the Rings or something. Kind of both of them together. But I meant that, the video. This is nothing. This morning it was so loud in here. Any questions on 5, 6, 7, or 8? No? Okay, and here's 9 and 10. I think I got closer in the other class. That's okay. I'd love to explain how I got anything. Cooper, do you have a question? No. I'm sure you're not the only one with this question.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Which one is it about?
Okay. Okay. What's the S's and A's mean?
Oh, okay. The S's and the A's mean side and angle, so it's just an abbreviation. So like if I say SSS, it just means side, side, side. So I've got all 3 sides are congruent.
I know that ASS can't be that woke me up.
That's why I said it several times, because I was like, I know someone's sleeping out there, and I said it 4 times because I was like, somebody will wake up after this.
I was like, what is she talking about?
Yep, there's a reason for that. Okay. All right, we checked the first page. Who got 5 or more right? Raise your hand if you got 5 or more right. Awesome. Who got 7 or more right? Okay, I still see a lot of hands. Some of us are thinking about that. What about 8 or more right? 8 or more right. What about 9 or more right? Colin, you still have your hand up?
No.
No? No. Kate, how many did you have your hand up for? Or no, that's not Kate. Eli. Eli, how many do you have your hand up for? 7. Awesome. So none of us got all 10, but we had some with 7, 8, and 9, right? I'm proud of that. That should be a good thing. I want us about at that percentage right now. We're going to get better, but I want us to kind of recognize what do we know, what do we not know. Okay, we're going to jump to the back, and I think this one was a little harder. So we're going to talk about it together, and then I'm going to do a couple with you. Okay, if I look at the example, got a lot of highlight on this page. Ooh, I got to fill out on the highlight. All right, if I'm looking at this problem, okay, it says I want angle, side angle to be true. I know that the angles at D are congruent, so that's one angle. I then have a reflexive property to make my side congruent. And then the last thing I want is an angle to connect that, so I want these angles to be congruent. We don't know those angles are congruent. Think of this more like a wish list than like a truth. This is like when you make a Christmas wish list, you put stuff on and you know that you may not get some of that stuff, right? We don't know if this is going to happen or not, but we want, if we were to list these at angle, side, angle, we would want these 2 angles to be congruent to each other in order to have angle, side, angle. So that's what we're marking on here. We don't know any of this is true. We just want it to be true, okay? So let's look at the next one, okay? I've got these angles, K and U are congruent. I have these angles, L and T are congruent. And I want it to go angle, side, angle. So I want the side in between the 2 angles to be congruent. Well, that would be KL and UT. So my answer is KL is congruent to UT. If that was true, then I would be happy. Again, it's a wish list. We don't know it's true. I can't prove it. I just want that. Are we okay with what we're doing so far? I mean, we're going to do a couple more. I know some of us may not be there yet. That's okay. Any questions, though, yet? Okay. Next one. ASA. Okay, I want ASA again. So I know that I've got these right angles congruent. And then I knew that I had vertical angles. So I was like, okay, let me mark the vertical angles. And then the last part was like, okay, I know what the C and R are congruent, and I know my vertical angles are congruent. In order for it to be ASA, I still need side CS to be congruent to side RS. So that's what I wrote up here. CS is congruent to RS. Starting to make a little bit more sense. Yeah, Caleb?
Why does it have to be this?
Why does it have to be what?
Why does it have to be both?
Why couldn't you pick a different side? Great question. So Caleb's asking, why couldn't I pick a different side? Why did it have to be CS and RS? Okay, the reason is it told me it wants ASA, so I want the side in between the two angles. So if these are the two angles that are given to me, I want the side that connects them. So that's CS. I want the side that connects them, which is SR. Now, if I had written angle, angle, side, I could have a choice now on which side I pick. I could have these two sides because they're corresponding and it would give me angle, angle, side. Or I could pick the other side. I could pick ES and ST because that would also be angle, angle, side. Since it wants the S in the middle, I need to pick the side that's in between those two angles. Does that help a little bit? Okay, I'm gonna show you one more answer and then we're gonna do the rest of them together. Because I'm assuming none of you really knew what you were doing. Is that a true assumption?
Yes.
Okay. Cooper feels yes. If you did know, I don't mean to insult you. I just think that as a whole, this was a little bit different. So we'll look at it all together. All right, this is the last one I have the answers up for. So I've got another ASA. Wow, I didn't make this very hard at all. W and K, and then I had vertical angles again. Since again, it was ASA, I need the S to be in between the two angles. I need the side to be between the two angles, which was WV and KV. WV and KV. All right, questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna erase the rest of mine and we're gonna treat it like I never did it and we're gonna do those together, okay? So you look at the next four and see if you can think of anything while I get my board ready for you. Even if you don't know how to name it, see if you can just identify what you want to be true. All right, you guys ready to look at it together? Okay, so I have this angle at D, those guys are congruent. And then I have something else that's not marked, but I know is congruent. What else do I know is congruent? Caleb? The reflexive property, this DC in the middle. That's reflexive property. I don't know what I did with my stylus, but I'll get it so my handwriting looks less trash. All right, and then now I'm gonna ask myself, what do I want it to equal? I want it to be two angles and then a side. I don't want it to be the angle that is in between the sides though. Let me get to the bottom. I do not want this angle. Whoa. I don't want the angles at C because that would make it angle, side, angle. And I want angle, angle, side. So I have to pick the other angle to do. I have to do T and E. That gives me angle, angle, side. Are we okay with that? So I'm going to write angle E is congruent to angle T. Again, just a wish list. We don't know if it's going to happen. All right, let's look at the next one. This one says angle, angle, side. Oh, it's the same thing. Angle, angle, side. I've got Y is congruent to M. And I've got X is congruent to L. And now I need one of the sides. Which sides? What's one option I could pick? Let's do that. What's one option I could pick? I can put you want to pick this one?
Yeah.
Well, it says angle, side.
Oh.
So not that one, right? We want one of the non-included sides. Nope, good, that's good. Z and X, and then what would be congruent to Z and X? Good. I like how you completely turned your head because sometimes I do that. I physically move my paper around to make it look like it's supposed to. Like, don't be afraid to do that. There's no shame in like resetting yourself up for success. If this is meant to confuse you, put it in the right way to make it look the best for you. So it could be ZX and NL, or it could be what other sides? What are the other two sides I could pick? Cooper? Very good. It could be NM and ZY. So it could be either of those answers. All right, so that one we had two options because there were a couple different things we could pick. All right, questions on those two so far? We got two more to do. Okay, this one says ASA. It looks like I already know this angle and that angle. What else do I know without having to do anything crazy? Reflexive, very good. GH is congruent to GH, and that's my reflexive property. Bless you. So now I've got angle side, and now I want the angle to be with that included side. Which angles am I looking at? Does anyone know? Caleb? I'm looking at these at H and G, right? However, if we just said angle H is congruent to angle G, there's two angles at G, and that would be kind of confusing. So we need to make sure we name it so that I know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the, like this angle right here. Can anyone name that so I'm looking at specifically that angle? We have to use three letters. HGI works. Okay, so Kamara went here. She did HGI. That works. Can someone name the other one in that exact same order? Caleb? Oh. IHG is not this one right here. VHG. You got the right angle now, but I want my vertices to match. So if I and V are in like the same spot, we should end with V. Since I went here, I went HGI. I went where this angle was. I now have to do the same thing. I go GHV. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah. GHV. Now, if I had written the first one in the other order, if I had written IGH, that would work. Caleb, I could have written VHG. Just make sure that they match. Okay. Everyone doing okay? No, I'm losing some of us. Very good question, Kamara. Kamara asked, when should it be an angle? When should it be a side? So think about what we have. So like on this specific example, we were given the angle, and then we could easily find the side with the reflexive property. So we're going to pretend like we were given that side. So I'm going to check off the idea that I have an angle. I'm going to check off the idea that I have a side, and then I need this last angle. Same thing for like the one above us. We had the angles at D, and then I had the side that was at DC, and I was missing an angle. So kind of see what you have and what you're missing. Actually, it sounds very Marvel-y over there, doesn't it? I want to be in that class. Sorry, guys. Sorry we don't watch Marvel movies in here. Okay, this next one says AAS. This is the last one on your homework. Okay, I already know I've got F and J are congruent. And then what else do I already know? Reflexive, good. There's a couple that we keep using. Reflexive, vertical angles. We'll also use midpoints a little bit. Those are things that should just kind of be at the top of your head. Always look for reflexive. Always look for vertical angles because those will be used a lot. Reflexive. And then now Am I looking for an angle or a side? An angle. I know, but look what's given. Yes. We were not given a side at the beginning, but we did just find one. So that's why we know we want an angle. And actually, you can pick either of the angles because this side is not connected to my angle. So like these sides work or these sides also work. Those are A, S. Ooh, I did not know I was supposed to die. The only thing that I think is kind of tricky about this picture is I have my laptop cord. Oh no. Oh no, we're good. I started sweating there for a second. I had no idea what it was gonna be if I didn't have it. I've been in like 4 rooms today, so it could be in there. Okay. You can pick either of the angles. The only thing is you would think maybe that like these two angles are congruent. But if you look closely enough at them, you'll see that the one on bottom, I think, is a little bit smaller than the one on top. Do you see that? Those are not congruent angles. So I think it's the ones that are opposite each other that are congruent. So it's like these two are congruent. You see what I'm saying? Can you name your angles? Just you can pick either two. Name what's congruent. Plug in. Can someone name the angles that I have marked right now? Okay. LJK is congruent to angle KFL. So those are the highlighted angles. Is that what you were marking? Okay, perfect. So those are the highlighted angles. We actually already know those. Let me rephrase. I want these angles right here. I want this one and that one. So we already know those, so I don't need to write that. Good job for labeling those though, Jane. Good job. What about these new angles that I have? What about those? Can someone name those for me? FKL. JLK. Very good, Kamara. FKL is congruent to angle JLK. So we could do it if those were my angles, but what if I had new angles at, those are my orange ones. Let me do it in like, I don't know, blue. What if these were angle markings? How would I label my blue angles? What would those names be? Really? FLK, good. FLK, and then JKL, very good. So both of those answers are acceptable. All right, we've spent enough time on this. I want to get into some more practice from yesterday's notes. I want to do as much of that as possible. I will have another homework on this stuff tonight, so this is good stuff to practice. When I see you next time in class, we're reviewing, and then we're taking a quiz, I believe, on Friday. So let me come pick up these papers. You have your notes from yesterday. They look like this, right here. We're going to finish as much of these as we can. We're going to start with that proof, okay? So I'm going to erase my board in a second, but let me get any paper homework from you first. Make sure your name's on it. Perfect. Thank you. start on the proof, and then we're going to do as many of the other practice problems as we can. But we got to get through the proof first. Okay. So let me erase all this stuff. All right, you should have all of the first day filled in. If you don't have this, I did videotape, I want to say E period yesterday. I videotaped somebody yesterday. So go ahead and find that on YouTube. It's called lesson 4.2 and 4.3 day 1. And this that I'm recording right now will be 4.2, 4.3 day 2. Okay, so we're looking at the proof. How do I start every proof? Given, very good, given. So I'm gonna write given on the first step. It says the midpoint of HS and G, or M is the midpoint of HS and GT. Okay, that's given. Let's go over to my picture and look at that. I'm gonna mark that M is the midpoint. If M is the midpoint of HS, then what do I know? They're congruent, right? I can break it apart to say HM is congruent to SM. I also know M is the midpoint of GT. So what do I know there? Also congruent. GM and TM are also congruent. And luckily, that's what the next step says. It says GM is congruent to TM and HM is congruent to SM. We know that because it was a midpoint. So we're going to write definition of a midpoint. Def of midpoint. By definition, a midpoint cuts a segment into 2 equal pieces. Then it says, oh, sorry, Cooper. You sure? Okay. Then it says angle GMH is congruent to angle TMS. Let's go find those. GMH right here. TMS is right here. Oh, what do we call that? Vertical angles. And what would my statement be in a proof? Vertical angles are congruent. Very good. Are congruent. All right, and then now we're at the very end. Now it says these 2 triangles are congruent to each other. So we have to use one of the postulates we learned yesterday. Can you remind me what one of my postulates was? What were one of those postulates we learned yesterday? I'm just going to make a list right here. There's 5. Look back at your notes if you don't remember. Billy, what's one? SSS, very good. Side, side, side. What's another one? SAS, very good, Lydia. What else? ASA, very good, Jane. 2 more. AAS, very good. And then 1 more. Cooper? Not SSA. Remember, we can't write that forward or backwards. Not backwards. HL, very good, Jane. Now, HL is technically an angle side, side, Cooper, but it's with a right triangle, so we use HL to represent that. It means hypotenuse leg. So in a right triangle, if those 2 sides are congruent, then it's congruent. What do I have here? Which one of those 4 do I, or 5 do I have here? Anyone know? SAS, very good. I've got side, angle, side. I saw some hands and I heard a couple people say it, so good job. Side, angle, side, congruence, that's it. Congrats, you did your first congruent triangle proof. Great job. Let's do another one. Questions on that one before I move on? Okay. Number 2 says use the figure to the right to complete the proof. Given H is the midpoint of GJ, GI is congruent to JI. Okay. What's my first thing? Given. Very good. We should always get those points. Then it says GH is congruent to GH is congruent to JH. Let's go over here and write that. Okay, those guys are congruent. Why am I allowed to say that again? Good, Abby. Definition of a midpoint. We know H is the midpoint. So that means that these segments are congruent. Def of midpoint. Awesome. Then it says HI is congruent to HI. Let's go look at my picture and see what that means. Here's HI. It's congruent to itself. What's my reason, Billy? You're close, but what's the one that we keep using? Reflexive. Very good. It's reflexive property. It's equal to itself. Reflexive property. And then GI is congruent to GI is congruent to JI. Sorry, G's and J's are really hard for me today. Why do I know that? Why do I know GI and J are congruent? Given. Very good. If you're ever confused, go back to the given or look at your picture and see what was drawn on there. That's given. I didn't have to know that. Whoa, I wanted to not write in that. And then last it says these triangles are congruent. Why do I get to say these triangles are congruent? I agree, Nolan. Why? All the sides are congruent. Very good. Nolan said SSS. He sees all my sides are congruent. Side, side, side. No angles, no nothing. Side, side, side. Very good. All right. Any questions from anybody so far? Okay. We're going to go to the next side, and we're going to do as many of these as we can. Let me erase the ones that I have. Now, my question to you is, do you want to try some on your own, and then I'll jump in a few minutes and tell you the answers, or do you need me to keep walking with you? What do you prefer? Why don't we do this? Why don't I'll stop talking for 2 or 3 minutes, and you do as many as you can, and then I'll come back in. And if you're good on your own, then you can just tune me out. And if you are not good on your own, then I'll be there to help you. Does that sound good? All right, go ahead. All right, should I join you guys? The time? Want to jump in? Okay. We're just going to start. We're going to go in order. I talked all day, so I don't know if I've said this to your class or not, but on Friday on your quiz, you'll have a big section that like looks like this. It'll just have triangles and you'll have to name like SSS, ASA, SS, whatever. So make sure that if you don't know this or if you're still struggling with this after class, don't wait to get help. Because like if you don't know this on Friday, you're gonna be screwed. And I don't mean that as a threat. I just mean it in reality. Like it's just not gonna go well. So make sure that you know this and take this part seriously. Okay, so I'm gonna go in. I've got this guy right here. I know these sides are congruent. I know those sides are congruent. Ooh, and I know TS is congruent by what? Reflexive, very good. Reflexive property. So I'm gonna say yes, they're congruent, and this one's by side, side, side. You get that right? High five, good job. Awesome, good. I'm glad you guys high-fived yourselves. All right, next one. Ooh, this one got tricky real quick, didn't it? What do these little arrows mean? Would you like to work for me, iPad? That'd be cool. Thank you. Parallel. So it means that those lines are parallel. If I were to like extend it, ooh, not like that. Extend these lines, I could draw this as a transversal through them. If that's so, then I'm able to see that I've got an angle right here with my parallel lines and my transversal, and I have an angle right here with my parallel lines and my transversal. Do you remember what that relationship between those angles is called? What do we call this? No, like corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior. What are these called? Good. And so we're going to write our statement. If lines parallel, then alt, int, angles congruent. Good, that was helpful. So now I know those angles are congruent. In addition to being parallel, the top and bottom segment are also congruent. Do you see that it has a congruent mark as well? And then there's one other thing that I can mark that's not marked yet. Reflexive, good. I told you we don't get too creative in here. It's a lot of the same stuff. Reflexive. Good, so now I have 1, 2, 3 things. What do I call this? I have a side, I have another side, and I have an angle. What do I call this? This one's side, angle, side, SAS, very good. HL can only be used if we have a right angle, Nolan, and while it looks like B and C are right angles, it's not marked, so we don't get to assume that. Does that make sense? So SAS. All right, looking at the middle guy. I actually don't even need to do any work here. I've got my right angles, and I've got this side is congruent, and these sides are congruent. Cooper, you know what I got? So that's the tricky part, right? Is that you know that HL only works with right triangles, but is my hypotenuse marked? Great question. Hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle. So that's not marked, so we don't get to call this HL. What is this one called? Side angle side, very good. Side angle side. And this looks silly sometimes, but I literally write SAS sometimes to make sure that I know, okay, well, I can't call it angle, angle, side because I don't have two angles. Don't trip yourself up or think too hard about it. I literally have a side, I have an angle, and I have a side. So it's side, angle, side. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, I've got these segments are congruent. What else do I have? Cooper? Good, I've got parallel lines. So that means that I've got some kind of angles going on here. Now you have two choices here. Question or thought? Okay, good. Let's do the vertical angles in 1 second. Let me hit the parallel lines first. You have two options. You can either use this as my transversal. Oh, if I can write it, that'd be cool. I could use this as my transversal, which would make these angles congruent. Or I could use this as my transversal and make these angles congruent. Either way is correct, but whichever one you pick will change your answer. So do you guys have a preference on which one I pick? Okay, I'm gonna leave it here. So these are alternate interior angles, so I'm gonna write that. If lines parallel, alternate interior angles congruent. And then Cooper, what else did you say? Vertical angles right there in the middle, right? Good, we look for reflexive, we look for vertical angles are congruent. And based on what we drew, what would I say is my reason for these triangles are congruent? I have that, I have that, I have that. It'd be A, S, A. A, S, A. Does what matter? Right, good. We don't have two sides, so we can't write that. Good question. All right, can we do one or two more? Yes, we'll go until the bell rings us out. All right. Here, there's a couple different things we could do. If I were to not mark anything else congruent, what would I call this? Jane? This one is HL. Why, Jane? Uh-huh. And what else is important that you need an HL? Right angle. Good. Phil, is that what you're going to say? Good. And we know that this also is a right angle right here, either because linear pairs are sup, or this is just one of those things that like we just know because of right angles perpendicular. Like we know there are 290 degrees there. And then third, we have the legs, but the biggest thing is the right angle.
All right, good afternoon, Cathedral.
Here comes your homework.
This Tuesday, we'll pause for prayer, but first, just a quick reminder for students. Students, you probably heard that the coronavirus cases are rising pretty rapidly in the nation and in the country, in the county, and also in our schools. So, hey, we urge you, you must wear those masks properly. You must keep socially distant in school. Let's do this so we can stay in school. We're on Irish, we're the Fighting Irish. Let's do this well, okay? We appreciate that. And now let's go ahead and pray. Lord, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Let's pray together in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and all God's children said,
Amen.
Amen. Class is ended.
Bye, guys.
Let's
Keep
wait
your
for
faces covered.
notifications second. Irish Energy Moment.
Cathedral, I have missed you so much.